It's official, the U.S. Department of Justice has finally filed criminal charges against Sam Bankman-Freed, former CEO and founder of FTX. SBF was arrested on Monday in the Bahamas related to charges by U.S. officials. The SEC's civil complaint includes charges of wire fraud conspiracy, securities fraud conspiracy and money laundering. From at least May 2019 through November 2022, Bankman-Fried engaged in a scheme to defraud equity investors in FTX Trading Limited, FTX, the crypto asset trading platform of which he was CEO and co-founder. Bankman-Fried raised more than $1.8 billion from investors, including U.S. investors, who bought an equity stake in FTX believing that FTX had appropriate controls and risk management measures. Unbeknownst to those investors, and to FTX's trading customers, Bankman-Fried was orchestrating a massive, years-long fraud, diverting billions of dollars of the trading platform's customer funds for his own personal benefit. We allege that Sam Bankman-Fried built a house of cards on a foundation of deception while telling investors that it was one of the safest buildings in crypto, the SEC chair, Gary Gensler, said in a statement.
CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us now to discuss the case. We always rely on you, Jessica. Thank you so much for being with us. What do we know about this arrest?
We don't know a ton right now because the indictment and it's in fact under seal. As you said, this is originating from the Southern District of New York, and they have said on social media that they're going to move to unseal the indictment. They basically want to give the public more information. So at this point, we just know that federal charges were filed, that the Bahamian government is cooperating, and we know that there is an extradition agreement between the two countries when the crime at issue would be a crime in either country and is punishable by more than a year in jail. If we're really going to try and hypothesize here and guess, what are the potential charges? Well, they relate to securities fraud, wire fraud, and bank fraud.
And so what's the next step in this apparent extradition? What would happen next?
So the U.S. government, I think, would specifically say we would like him back here on U.S. soil. We would like to have an initial hearing, a preliminary hearing. And typically, even though there is no typical about this, that's what would happen next. The charges would be read and we would all know a lot more about what the specific charges are here. It shows us that the federal investigators have been working very carefully behind the scenes because, as we know from discussing a lot of different criminal cases, federal prosecutors tend to be very careful. And in a high profile prosecution like this, it's not we don't know for sure that they would be able to get a conviction, but we know they think they have proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Let's bring in CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin now. And Andrew, let's just start right there with the timing of this arrest. On the eve of his testimony before Congress, the chairwoman of that committee, happy to see the prosecution going forward. It made no secret of her displeasure that now his testimony will not be under oath before Congress. Right. What's with the timing here?
Hard to understand. A lot of people had thought that he was going to be walking into a trap of sorts because he would be testifying under oath and there could be additional charges potentially of defrauding the world if, in fact, he were to have lied under oath. I think at this point it looks like somebody inside has flipped. Somebody close to him. There's been a lot of speculation about a number of people in and around FTX, in and around Sam Bankman-Fried, and whether they were able to do that. If you look through the SEC complaint this morning, in fact, what you can see is some significant details about what actually happened inside, details that would have been unavailable to law enforcement prior. So perhaps that is what may have happened in this case.
Yeah, often it takes months and months, if not years, as you well know, to build a white-collar criminal case. So many are, as you just said, speculating that perhaps someone on the inside has flipped, turned against him, and is guiding prosecutors here. Sam Bankman-Fried, to you and to the many other interviews he has done subsequently, has consistently said, I didn't know there was commingling of funds between FTX, the crypto exchange, and his own hedge fund. That seems to be the linchpin of the government's case. And the SEC, at least, is saying there was deception here. So it suggests the government has this evidence.
It very much appears that way. And in fact, there's a specific detail in the SEC complaint this morning that seems to suggest that he understood, very much so, that there was $8 billion that was in his hedge fund that had been moved to another account at one point. In fact, that they were going to start charging interest on, and he started moving that money again to another account. So when you start to piece those pieces together and you think about what's called criminal intent, that he intended to do this, is that kind of evidence that prosecutors are going to use to try to build their case.
And then finally, I mean, what about the investors? Some of them not rich people who poured their money into this and trusted in this. Is there anything about these indictments, the civil case by the SEC, that makes recouping those losses any more likely?
I'm afraid to say that piece of it, I think, is going to be the most difficult component of this. The idea of getting that money back is going to be a long and arduous process. There is going to be some money for those who invested in something called FTX.US. There may be a better chance at getting some of that money back. But we have heard from so many people who have used this service, some of whom say they have lost their life savings.